Hi everyone, so we've got Paul Engeman here, one of our speakers for our conference that's coming up, Understanding Money Conference. And I've got a couple of questions that I had for him that he's going to answer for us. But before I do, I will let him just give you a brief intro to himself and why he's going to be speaking at this conference.
Hi Destiny, thanks for the opportunity. I'm a director at Ainsley Bullion, so we sell gold and silver bullion, so that's physical bars and coins of gold and silver to mum and dad investors and self-managed super funds and the like. I've been at Ainsley for around 5 years, but prior to that I was in 20 years in property development, so a bit of a mix of background, but yeah, it should be an interesting day.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So my first question is, in your experience, where does money come from?
Look, it's we use the word money, but I think too often people get confused between money and cash, and cash is the operative word. We've got many types of money, and in many different forms. And I'll be talking at the conference about gold and silver as a type of money that's arguably the oldest, been around for thousands of years. But the cash that the people regularly talk about is what we call a fiat currency. And a fiat currency is backed by essentially nothing intrinsic other than the promise of a government. You then have two types of fiat currency. There's the folding money we have in our wallets, which they print at will. And then you've got the digital cash or digital money that sits in your bank accounts, and that's basically created by banks or central banks at the press of a button, and literally out of thin air. And I guess the key part of that too is that digital money and the printed is backed by debt. So it's all created through creating debt, and I think it's that debt that, or the accumulation of all that debt, that we're going to see as something that's going to be quite scary for the world coming up.
Yeah, indeed. And I think it's very important, especially for our youth, to kind of have some understanding about that and to prepare them as well. So with that note, my next question is actually, how do you feel that the Understanding Money Conference will benefit our youth and future?
Look, I think this conference is actually, I think it's a brilliant idea, and kudos to arranging this. It's a unique opportunity, I think, for our youth to learn and get a better understanding of finance outside of what our schools are teaching us. It gives them access to a range of experts that they wouldn't ordinarily have access to, especially outside of our school system, and really, enable them to make much wiser choices of the future.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree. The other question that I have is relating to you and your youth. How do you believe that your life would be different today if you had something like the Understanding Money Conference and similar things and programs in your youth?
Yeah, look, we and as I touched on, it was no different back in my day, and I'm nearly 50, but we had no real access to economics or finance education until much later in your schooling, when you could take it as an elective, so it wasn't even compulsory. So you never really got an understanding of something that, rightly or wrongly, love turns the world, but money is a very big part of our lives, and yet we have no real formal education. And what education we do get is I guess, somewhat biased, and we don't have access to traditional economics education in our system. So I missed all of that, and a lot of our youth are as well. So when you're deprived of that sort of input and that sort of education, then it's very hard to make proper choices in terms of where you're going to create, invest, and protect your wealth throughout your adult life. So it was, and I learned the hard way, as many people do. We all make bad investment choices. I was lucky. My father got into this gold and silver business some time ago, and prior to the GFC, I'd learnt enough to see what was coming. I sold all my shares. I bought gold and silver, and in the GFC, which again was a debt-born crisis, we saw shares halve and gold double just in that period. So I was lucky in that sense that I'd had that education later in my life to protect me from one of the bigger crashes we've had. But as I alluded in your first question, I think this debt situation has got a lot worse, and we're looking at potentially a lot bigger crisis in not the too distant future.
Yeah, that's very true. How do you feel that your life may have been different, even if it was just while you were younger, if you had had some more education and some more support around understanding money?
Well, it all comes down to choices, doesn't it? I would have made better choices. So through how I invested, through how I thought of money and acted with it. And look, you got to have fun, especially in your youth. And this is not about pouring all your hard-earned into investments and taking a protective stance in life. You've got to have a balance. But I didn't have enough inputs to achieve that balance that I think the attendees will be able to when they walk away.
Perfect, thank you. One last question just came to me, and that would
Sure.
be, if you can think back to when you were younger, if something like this was available, what aspect of this conference do you think would have been appealing to you? What thing do you think would have been fun and would have got your attention to want to come along and have an understanding of money?
Yeah, well, I think it's the range of speakers. I think you put together a fantastic range. So people get, again, I talk about what the schools are teaching us. It's very it's very targeted. We're going to have a guy there about cryptocurrencies. You're going to learn about gold and silver. There's going to be different types of money spoken about. And again, it's all about choices. The more options you know about, the more choices you can make. And I wish I'd had those choices when I was young.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And we're very excited to have you come speak at the conference. And we hope everybody else who watches this joins us as well. So have a wonderful a time on your holiday where you are right now, which I'm sure you have been able to achieve because of your smarter choices later on in life to do with money.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a hot and balmy 8:30 in the morning in Croatia here. So yeah, no, it's beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, and look forward
Thanks, Destiny.
to the conference.
Great. Look forward to it too. Bye.
Bye.